Ollie Jackson, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Good to be here. Good to be in the presence of the cyber human world.
Yeah, it's a cyber human world. That's a good way to put it. It's a very different the whole virtual the whole virtual thing. I don't know. It almost has like a almost smacks of like a bad '80s sci-fi movie or something. You know, I mean, it's nice to have the technology to be able to do something like what we're doing right now, but I sure miss, playing gigs in person and hanging out with my friends, musician, musician friends in particular. So, how's your family and how's everything going?
Everything is cool. Yeah, everything is cool. I've lost one friend. I mean, a few people, of course. Wallace Roney passed,
Yeah,
um, and I lost another friend, Representative Isaac Robinson, who was a new friend, and we became really close fast. And he was a representative, uh, forget which district, in the Woodbridge area. Kind of, we grew up in the same neighborhood in Detroit, and he passed unexpectedly. It was kind of crazy. So, I mean, and
mm,
you're only like one or two people removed from people that have lost loved ones. So
yeah,
it's a very interesting time.
yeah. I interviewed Antoine Roney, and of course, we talked about his brother, and yeah, it's a too many folks. Ellis uh, passed away recently, and man, it's a different thing. I mean, this coronavirus is serious.
It's serious, and at the same time, the management of it is not serious.
Oh yeah,
Politically speaking, you know, I don't know who's going to hear this, but I mean, as an artist speaking, it's extremely poorly managed, and it's exposing a lot of flaws in the current system that we live in.
yeah.
The so-called democracy in America is not so much of a democracy, really. I mean, the places in the world that are worse, but for us to be a world leader, so to say, is really sloppy. It's really sloppy out here, on all fronts.
You know, I talked to Jay Metcalf, Better Sax, and he was talking about his experience working as a musician in New York, and this is prior to him moving to France, where his his situation was such that he could actually start his online business. I mean, that's why he was able to do that, and why he's been so successful is because stuff like health insurance and the musicians in France. If you this is how I explained it to me. If you work a certain amount as a freelance musician, then you got you got a steady paycheck. And so with that paycheck, even when you have this sort of ebb and flow, that's natural for freelance musicians. He was able to, you know, he was able to get all of the stuff together and get his online thing going. And with the way that we have things set up here, I mean, this thing has been so devastating to musicians.
Well, I could elaborate. I could elaborate on the French system
Yeah,
a little
please
bit.
do.
So I don't know if Jay has residency, if he's a resident of France, and if
Yes, he is.
he is. So yeah, if you're a resident and you're a musician and an artist, it's a thing called intermittence, and intermittence is exactly how you described. If you do a certain amount of gigs and you get a cachet or like a kind of, it's a subvention, some subvention from the government, but the cachet is just basically says that you work at a particular place and it's documented. In the government, and you work maybe it's 40 or so concerts. I forget the minimum. There's a minimum amount of performances that you have to do that are documented. And they subsidize your income. So it's somewhat of a livable wage. And that's the social element of France's system that allows artists to actually make a livable wage or to provide support so people can be artists. There's a other side to that too. There's not so good as artists that are real and hungry. If you are a musician in New York City, there's always competition that drives. It used to be anyway. let me preface that. It used to be competition that would drive people to be good. So you actually had to be really good to work. So now what happens is most people are racing to get to whatever that minimum number is to get support from the government. So sometimes it hurts the quality of the artistry.
I see. That's interesting.
That's a different perspective. Living in the south of France, you meet a lot of musicians, but quality is quality, and it takes some people, that know what quality is and experience it to be able to identify that. But if you don't have anyone keeping like an honest tab on the quality of artistry and musicianship, then it doesn't matter anymore. So that is an element of that. However, in a global perspective, Europe in general are much further ahead in their cultural consciousness, their cultural awareness and understanding that, art and culture are part of what makes humanity what it is. You take that out, then we just all a bunch of animals just running around. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's all of this emphasis on STEM right now, as far as going to school, and one thing that is pretty often parents. They want to know what their kid is going to get out of a degree in music. So why, when they finish this degree in music, what kind of job are they going to get? Or what is this going to, and I understand that makes a lot of sense to me. But, I always think, well, what is a person with an English degree going to do? Or what is a person with any degree for that matter? It's not like a degree is some kind of guarantee of a particular occupation or a particular potential even to generate income. You still have to do the work and you still have to find your way. And my point to parents usually is that if your kid has this burning passion to play music, and if that's just something that they can't live without, then pursuing a degree sounds like a good idea. But if they don't have that burning desire, like they can't live without it, maybe another degree program would be more fitting. And I know, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to try to recruit as many students as possible. But I'm saying this to say, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I'm saying this to say that thank you so much
for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
With all of the focus on STEM, like if I get an engineering degree, then that's going to be the thing. Yeah, that's great. And all this emphasis on science and mathematics and everything. But that's not like the reason. I mean, if the arts provide a context for us to experience emotion, to experience life through someone else's eyes. And there's this human component that you really can only get there. And science is wonderful. Mathematics is beautiful. All of that stuff is great. And matter of fact, without science and technology, we wouldn't be talking right now over this right now. So they can have their due.
I mean, there are a few perspectives on it. I mean,
yeah.
One perspective is music is the first STEM.
Yeah.
The heaviest people in the world, or the scientists and the mathematicians, they were musicians. I mean, first. I mean, you could go back to the beginning. It's like art, music.
Right.
Without even, how many people were heavier than Bach? How many people
right.
heavier than, Michelangelo or Picasso, or,
right.
you could go on and on. Who was heavier than them? No, they were the gateways to enlightenment. So not to take anything away from other people, but to be an artist on a very high level requires a multitude of things. In reference to music today, it's just, music education is a business within itself. And I've said it for years. If you really want to be a musician, you find the baddest cat wherever you are, or you go to them and you're just an apprentice, or you try to become an apprentice and you be around them and you learn as much as you can. The way specifically in jazz music, you would be around, you would shed as much as you could or learn all of the music of someone's band and hope that they would hire you in their band when somebody got sick or they left the band, and you'd audition and you would learn, and that would be your school. That's how you learn how to play the music.
Right.
It being so insulated, inside of an institution like a laboratory. And then there are people that can technically play. So to like your point, or they're passionate about playing, but you could relate it to sports. How many people are passionate about playing basketball and are technically really good? but you doing that in, let's say being in high school and being the best guy in your high school or in your city compared to making it onto a Division I basketball team or program, that's a whole nother world. And then being a guy that's a starter on that team, or then being a guy who's a star on that team, and then that leap to making it into the NBA. I mean, it's, the chances are slim, but that goes the same with musicians. Because you can play your horn doesn't mean that you're an artist all of a sudden. It doesn't mean
right.
that, what do you have to say? And for many of the great musicians, it took them a long time to develop artistry. It just doesn't come. And the people that we revere, that they were really young and playing, you have to think about the world and the level of quality that was all around them. They were playing with the best of the best, in their developmental years. So the environment kind of dictated the quality and the level of people. So now everything is just isolated and everyone has a perspective, and it's moved very far away from the roots and the trunk of the tree, or the main branches of the tree. So it is representative in the art that we see, because people are like, oh, well, it's subjective. Well, I like this and I like that. Like this one conversation that I have with regular people, I say, I don't really want to talk about music. as people say, well, music's subjective. I said, well, it's like reading books. Like if I want a scholar and a guy has written 20 books, and so if he's written 20 books, he's probably read 2,000 books.
Right.
See, so just to understand his book, like someone great like Albert Murray, who I had the pleasure of meeting as a very young man, I said, man, you had to read 3 or 4 books to just understand his book. Right. So with musicians, it's like, you know, I talked to some students at Duke University a year or so ago, or maybe almost 2 years now. And, you know, a guy challenged me on a topic of, he said, well, I think Kendrick Lamar is the modern day Duke Ellington. And so I said, you know, I didn't argue with him. I said, okay, well, let's talk about it. I said, let's do it quantitatively. Let's not do it qualitatively. I said, well, how many rhymes has Kendrick Lamar, you know, produced? How many? Like just numbers. And the guy didn't really know. I said, it's your argument. Let's do it quantitatively. So I said, let's give him 200. Let's give him 200.
Right.
I said, you know how many scores Duke Ellington wrote? I said, like, so orchestrations, like, you know, jazz orchestra, large ensemble. So do you know how many? The guy didn't know. I said over 10,000. Yep. He said, you know how much time it takes to just write one score? We're not talking about the quality. We're just talking about the actual quantity. And this is his argument. I said, I'm not even, you know, the whole class, just, you know, the peer thing, the element in the room, you know, and it might have been like 40, 50 students. It was like, I mean, you could say whatever you want. And I think our world now is at a place where people can talk. I mean, it's like that commercial that they had, a Holiday Inn Express commercial. They said, the guy goes over, the guy is on the ground. Says, hey man, are you a doctor? He was like, no, I just stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. And that's the vibe that people are on out here now. It's like, are you a musician? No, but I saw a lot of YouTube videos on YouTube. It's like, okay. That's why, so I don't venture down the road of talking about music with people that aren't really musicians. And even the younger musicians, they think they know, but I say, you don't know. You don't, because you can't know. I said, I'm at the stage of life where I've probably, you know, the Malcolm Gladwell book, you know, what's the name of his book? It's about
Outliers.
The Outliers, like the 10,000 hour rule. I said, I've played probably over 10,000 gigs in my life. I said, so that's 10,000 performances in front of people, let alone the amount of time you've practiced, let alone the amount of time that you rehearsed. I said, so where are you at with just those numbers? We're not talking qualitatively, because that's a whole nother realm. I said, you have to be educated and actually have some reference of quality or taste, you know, to talk about the quality of it. But that's where we are now. So, you know, people, they get their marketing thing together and they hook it up with their friends and they just stroke themselves in school. Oh, hey man, you sound great. Yeah, man, you sound great. For us, when we came up, if a master didn't co-sign you, you didn't sound great.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And you didn't have a career. Unless you played in someone's band of note and respect in the world, it was like I don't care what you say about yourself or what media says, you were not validated. And I feel like a part of the problem just in the music world, that hierarchy of the elders, women, men, the elder statespeople of the music, their power has been zapped by commercialism, marketing, critics, like all of the people that actually aren't in the music really. They're on the periphery of the music. The artists are the music.
Right.
So it's like, you know, because you look cute and you got a little thing going or you some kind of gimmicky thing, we can sell that. So it's about sellability as opposed to artistry.
Yeah, you know, I interviewed Branford Marsalis, and you remember he's on that. There's that documentary film that was on VH1 years ago called "Before the Music Dies," and he's quoted in that movie. I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but it's something that I reference often. I talk to my students about, but he basically says, if you ever want to guarantee that you'll get something wrong, just get 100 people in a room and have them vote on it. So now obviously that's like the death nail to any of these reality TV shows, the contest shows like American Idol and The Voice and all of those kind of shows. But it also is a kind of a death nail against this sort of generating social media in such a way to generate the most likes, because you know we want people to hit that little button, and then we want the view counter to say a certain number, and it's a certain kind of validation, and it's not necessarily because the content was of quality, was actually saying something that meant something, but the right buzzwords are said and the right sort of flashy imagery was put in the right organization so that it tends to generate more more likes and more views. Now, sometimes it is the case that things that are actually of quality get a lot of views. So it's not necessarily always faulty, but it seems that the emphasis behind, like the reason behind posting stuff, it's it's hard not to get sort of wrapped up in that and almost accept the likes as some kind of validation, and that's the lowest possible level validation. I mean, it's not like what you were saying before, like when we came up, if you were not co-signed by one of the masters, then sorry. Yeah, now it's like anybody can validate you. It's like
and that's the problem with our world. Validation. It's like if you can get 1 million idiots to say you're great, then I'm just like, yeah, but who are the people? Like, who are the people? Or 1 million bots? I mean, you know, you got click farms all over the world, you know, just clicking like on things that they're not even real. So you're being validated by what community? And it's really interesting because I tell musicians or artists, I said, if anybody is liking you on Instagram, whatever, they're not coming to your gig.
Yeah.
People that are engaged, like, why would you be on social media? I get that a lot because I'm not a big social media person. You know, but I'm not. It's like, man, if you're not serious about what you're doing and you're not focused about your art, like, because people on the internet that you don't know or have any clue, they like it. I mean, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. You know, I see the social media thing as I don't like what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because of the way that the market is, it's like a necessary evil. It's almost like especially with in education. So virtually all of the students that I'm trying to recruit, to come to my school, virtually all of them are on social media, and in particular on Instagram. And it's almost it's become like almost impossible to reach students below a certain age without engaging them through those sort of social media portals. And I'm okay with that if I get a bite and then I say, okay, now here's the real content. Okay, now we're going to deal with some real, information. But it's a problem. It's a problem. And I don't know. I don't know how this thing is going to change. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe through this pandemic and people just getting just totally tired of looking at each other through a screen or interfacing with, their mobile device for any kind of human interaction, maybe that will cause people to desire to actually go out and see live music and to actually want to interface with real people.
There's a quote from a really, really dear friend of mine, great musician, world's great trumpet player. He says this is his quote: less Facebook, more Arvin's book.
Yeah.
I'm
with that. I said I'm with that.
Yeah, I mean he summed it up. I mean, that's basically it. Or like, I don't know, man. The world is moving in a different place. However, like connections like this, I mean, we first played together, man. I mean, I know we were like teenagers, maybe if I was a teenager.
Yeah, I think we were teenagers. It was you're about a year. You're a little bit less than a year younger than me.
Okay.
We're like the same age, and so I was looking at your website, and I was looking at I was doing some research on you, and I noticed that on the Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is known for being accurate.
Yeah.
But I noticed that there was a in your discography there was a CD that was missing.
Oh, there's a lot of CDs missing.
Well,
that has to be rectified.
Well, I'm teasing because it was my recording.
I remember that. That's one of my very first recordings I think I ever played, and it was quite memorable. I can remember it like yesterday.
And Marcus Belgrave was on that. We did a Goodbye Pork Pie Hat.
That's right.
That
right.
solo that he takes on that. Oh my goodness.
Well, that's what we have to continue to keep, because that's the essence of what the music is about. It's like the moment. I equate it to. I spent a lot of time. My younger son is a football player, soccer player. In America, I have to say soccer, but in the world, it's football. But it's a lot of, like, if you think about it, you can make the correlation to being a quote unquote jazz musician. Our classic music here in America. For a soccer player, you spend all this time with the ball, right? When you're young, messing with the ball, dribbling the ball, juggling the ball, kicking the ball, doing this and that. When you get to a professional level, 90% of your time is without the ball, or more. 95%, you don't have the ball. So it's your mastery of knowing what to do with the ball. It's more about where you are in the field and reading what's happening out in the field. And that correlation with being a musician is all of the technical things that you learn. Like, you're supposed to know that. You're supposed to have a good sound on your horn. You're supposed to have facility, or know all of your scales and know all of your theory, your harmony. Know at least a couple hundred standards.
Right.
And then knowing them through the keys. Like, that's the given. Like, if you want to be a professional, and this is what people miss, like the bar seems like it's been lowered so low. I said, that's a given. Like that's a prerequisite. Because what happens when you're on the bandstand, it's about you listening and being able to respond to what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And so these are the things that, unfortunately, because now music has just become a business. People will go to school to be, they'll get a degree and they turn around and they're teachers. They have no real life experience out here playing music or playing with somebody and knowing what's required to actually be a professional or even failing at being a professional. Like that's valuable. Like, hey, I had my stuff together. I went to New York. I got my butt kicked. And I was like, man, this is another level, because that's valuable. But you have people that don't even have any connection to those experiences, and they're music educators or so-called music educators. So, and not everyone is going to be a professional. And it's like degrees of professionalism, right? What degree of professionalism? He was like, well, I'm a pro. It's like, yeah, you could be a pro. You earn money doing it. But if I put this music in front of you, are you going to be able to play?
Right.
Right. In the context, you have pros that can read it down and play it, and it'll be okay. Then you have another level of pro. They can put, how can I say? They have an essence and they can put their thing on it. Then you have guys that can come in and bring a whole nother perspective and life and look at the whole arrangement and say, hey, why don't we try this and try that? And bring a level of musicianship and artistry to the music. Like that's a whole nother level. So it's like, where is that going with the music in general? And this is across all genres. And that's not to say that people aren't out there doing it, but why is that? There's a multitude of variables, but how do we get back to it? You know what I'm saying? Like what music that was produced 30 plus years ago, I mean, you could argue the quality of the musicianship, the quality of the production, all aspects. Sometimes even the sound of the music is better. There was more care in it and more time. Like now everything is just like you just churning out stuff. Oh, I did this, I did that, I did that. But no one can sit back and absorb it. It takes time of investment to even listen to music. Because I know when we were younger, most of our time was spent listening, not even playing.
Yeah. It's an interesting problem that we have right now. So we're old enough so that we still have, or we came up during a time when we developed a real appreciation for the music, an appreciation for individual recordings, where you'd have to go to the record store, to actually go and acquire the particular recording that you wanted, and then where we took that one recording and we listened to it over and over. And there was fellowship, and everything that happened around listening to this music, listening to it together. And unfortunately, what's happened for let's say, certainly mid-20s and younger, but maybe all the way up to 30 and younger, when music started to become free and anybody could get it, and when YouTube, obviously we're talking especially over the last 10 years, 15 years, YouTube really took off, and now you could get everything on YouTube. And you could get when Napster, and first it was file sharing and everybody was doing this thing illegally, and then they turned that into the streaming, right? So now everybody's got their streaming subscription, and it's hard to keep track of which recordings belong to what album, because of the way that they're, you have this playlists thing, like on Spotify, and okay, that's maybe that's cool. I'm not trying to totally dog that, but an album is intended to be listened to in a particular order, right? And I mean, if you're not doing it in one sitting, at least that order, you have a certain continuity, because that music goes together. You know, it's not like a random collection of things from, here's my playlist from all this stuff that I like. Okay, well, that's cool, but how is that really, I don't know, in our community, we hear a lot. I mean, I hear a lot of people, and I talk myself about documentation. And when we say documentation, we're talking about recordings. So where was I 5 years ago? Where was I 10 years ago? Where was I, whatever? And that's what those recordings are. They're like snapshots of a moment in time, and you lose that continuity when you don't listen to them in a certain way. And when you don't spend the time, really, like you said, it takes time to absorb music. It's not possible to listen to, you know, all of this barrage of music and all this stuff. You know, you listen to, you ask students, well, what kind of music do you like? And they're like, oh, I like everything. Okay. Okay, so what, let's dig into that a little bit. So what do you mean by you like everything? What about it do you like? Which artists are we talking about? What time period? You know, what kind of instrumentation are we dealing with? Like, what do you like? You know, but I don't know that it's rough. I think the way that it's set up now, it almost encourages people to not. It encourages people to not really value the music at the same level.
Well, listen, I'd say for most young musicians, for you to be really good, you don't need more than 5 records. I'm gonna just keep it real.
Yeah.
This is my blueprint for whoever's listening to this, and the young musicians, for people that young or medium age or whatever age you are. You need 5 albums of quality. You need 5 albums of quality and diversity. If you learn those 5 albums, you will have a good foundation for being able to play this music, or being a musician, especially in the jazz vernacular. I just, you know, or American classic music vernacular. And if you know them, you know the arrangers, the solos, the melodies, and you know them like cover to cover. You know all the solos. So if you're a trumpet player, you know the saxophone solo, you know the piano solo, you know what the bass is doing, you know what the drums are doing. You could break down the arrangements. And if you're really serious, you could transcribe them. And it's not necessarily for the transcription of being super accurate and technical, but for how it all fits together, the framework of how the music works together. So if you took early jazz recording, like New Orleans, traditional New Orleans music, would be like Jelly Roll Morton or Louis Armstrong, King Oliver, Louis Armstrong. You take from that era. You could take something from early Duke Ellington era. You could take something from Count Basie. You could take Ahmad Jamal Trio. You could take, you know, Ornette Coleman, and you could take like maybe even let's say any of Art Blakey's music, or Horace Silver, Art Blakey, Horace Silver.
Right.
And in any modern, you could take some, I mean, even like Wayne Shorter or somebody like that. You're good. That's it. Or you could take, you know, Wynton Marsalis or you know, Branford, his early band, or it's like a continuation of Miles's concept or rework. So if you take 5 of those, you could pick 5. That's all pretty diverse.
Crazy people music.
Or ran for crazy people music. So that's enough. Or you could take one of Terrence Blanchard's early recordings, Donald Harrison, Terrence Blanchard. So you could take 5 albums spanning like the whole canon of the music without vocals or with vocals. I left Charlie Parker out of there, but I mean, you could put him or Dizzy and Charlie Parker, you could put them in there, or different eras of the music. And you could put Monk in there as well. That will round you out for a very diverse perspective of the music and how it's constructed and what's significant and what's not. Where's the synergy? Where are the things that are different? And the sound of the music, in how the music is arranged and orchestrated. That's everything you need to know. That's simple.
Yeah, it's one thing that you're mentioning is there's sort of like passive listening where the music is happening and you're using it to, I don't know, you're actually focusing on your homework, but the music is playing, or it's like music is on while you're going to sleep, or music is on while you're driving in the car, but it's too low down for you to actually be able to hear it. My wife does that a lot, and she doesn't understand why that bugs me. Because if it's, it's like just soft enough, like, I can hear that and I know what it is. Because I remember Branford said something once. He said he doesn't listen for pleasure.
I can agree with that. You know why? Because for me, when I listen to music, it's like your brain is activated in a different way.
Oh yeah.
You're listening for like let's say you focus just on a solo. You're listening for how he constructs a solo over a form. Like you might know the form of the tune or the harmonic structure, but it's how they approach it. That's the beauty and the genius of what the art form allows. And most people don't understand the quality. Some people soloing that you go like, man, I don't even know how he can hear like that. Like when you're around great soloists. Like I've been very fortunate to be around great soloists my entire life. It's a blessing. But it's also a curse because then you have to listen to other people that think they're great solo, and it's sad and it's terrible. And you want to just say to them, man, like, what are you doing? And sometimes it's to the point where it's so sad, you just try to be encouraging because there's nothing you're going to tell. They're so far away from it that it's just, why even be the bad guy when there's nothing you're going to say to them that's going to change any result. So,
we've been, and you've said this a few different ways, but we've sort of been implying this whole thing about there is a quantifiable, there is such a thing as quality, as something actually being good. There is an actual frame of reference and a target. It's not just about subjectivity. There are objective quantities. there are, there are. Okay, so one problem that I have with like the whole kind of postmodern kind of, the whole speak my truth, this is my truth, and all this. I'm not. Look, there's some value there. Okay, I'm not trying to totally dog that, but there is the truth, and then there, and if your truth does not cohere with the truth, then you're the one that has to change, right? You have to. I mean, if you're trying to correspond with reality, and if this music is demanding a certain standard, this is my truth. This is the way, hey, this is how I feel. Okay, that's cool, but that's not, there's a disconnect there. And I like, I yearn for discussions with musicians like yourself where we are willing to actually say, that is sad. That ain't happening. And this right here is what's, what you should be focusing on, because it seems like there's not enough of that right now. There's too much patting everybody on the back and not enough. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, because no one wants to piss off students whose parents are paying for them to go to school. Listen, man, they told you were sad and they would kick you off of the bandstand and that would be it. And you didn't get invited back until you had your stuff. And maybe it wasn't a guarantee for you to get back on the band. I remember the days of cats would not want to sit in if they didn't know the tunes, and they would not sit in. We wouldn't. I would sit in on something. I was like, man, you'd be hesitant because that was your rep. That's all you had. You were only as good as the last time somebody heard you play. And if you were sad, that was going to be a long time for you to let that down. You were like, I ain't sitting in. You got it. And when the guys that were older and established and you knew who they were, you would be like listening and you had your notepad out. You were not messing around. It was serious for us. Now it's just like, oh, I went to this school and I went to that school. And I'm doing this new thing. I was like, man, it's to me, it's a joke. It's not for real. It's like, I don't care what your truth is. You don't know anything. You're 20 years old or whatever. How old, you don't know anything. You don't know. And get out of here. Keeping it real. I mean, like people say, keeping it real. Like, that's keeping it real. Like, do not show up. Hey, can I sit in, man? Like, who are you? No, you can't sit in. And then you sit in and play like a million courses of nothing. And then it's like, yeah, man, you're really blowing on that tune. And what's the jazz bot? Somebody's played me that. Maybe it was Aaron Goldberg or somebody shared this jazz bot. Yeah, man, it was really killing. Like the thing that you were doing was like really hip. Yeah, man. It's like, bro, what? What are you talking about? Play the music and be respectful to the people on the. It's not like the thing that people miss the most about our classic music here or improvised music collective is not about you.
Yeah. What
you solo and you play is about the music. It's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the level you need to be on. Like, you need to be on the level of what can I play to uplift the music and how can I include all of these people with me to help tell this story. Yeah. Not about, oh man, I've been shedding all of these A2s and these changes and look at me, check all of this out. It's like, man, okay.
Yeah. It seems to me that the challenge in the tradition was always, how can you, as you said, uplift the music, pay homage and respect, while still finding a way to express your own personality.
That's going to happen, though, Sean.
Well, no, I'm with that, but it's flipped now. Now what it is I'm going to do my personality and do all of the stuff I want to do, and and then I'm going to play it in a jazz context or in a traditional context. Like, in other words, the instrumentation is that way in certain features. Okay, we're going to swing the eighth notes. Okay, we're going to, there's certain sort of features of the music, but it doesn't really have much to do with the tradition of the music. And most of the time, it's most of the time cats are not listening. They're not listening to each other at all. There's no communication. No communication. I mean, in order to communicate, you have to be able to say exactly what this cat just said, the same way they just said it. Now, if you can't do that, then how are you actually in a position to be able to actually play something that relates to that, takes that, as takes that for granted, and says, okay, this is what's happening. This is how I'm going to frame this. Okay, now I'm going to add something to that. You can't add something to something that you can't say. So it even starts right there, and that's not even the purpose for this active listening that you were talking about is so that you can have a language that's in common with other musicians. So you can have a language that's in common, and so certain decisions make sense because they're educated by the same body of music. And so if you haven't done that, and then you're all self-absorbed, like, hey, I just want to do what I want to do and play how I want to play, and here's my 30-second notes on that. I don't know. It just seems to me like there's a lot of opportunities that are being missed.
Well, because the people that should be playing and people checking out the music, all of these classes and lessons and people, going to schools, it's like, no, how about you just go to the gigs of the people that can play? That's how you really can learn how to play.
Yeah.
Now there's not like there was a million gigs going on before COVID-19.
Right.
But, just the scenes of people playing live music. Like if there was more live music in the world, then the quotient of people's ability to play would go up. Now it's just like some laboratory stuff. It's like, yeah, you work out a whole bunch of stuff and it's very cerebral. The emotional level of you being able to respond, like you say, can I play back what I just heard in the same way, with the same vernacular, with the same tone, with the same vibe, the same rhythm.
Right. It's not a paraphrase.
Right. The same thing. Specific. Being specific. There's a big problem with that. And then you got the other whole end of the spectrum where people just copy exactly.
Right.
Like something exactly like it. It's like, well, where's your personality in?
Right.
I did a few years ago, I was a musical director for a concert at Jazz and Lincoln Center for the Buddy Rich Centennial. And it was really interesting because, Buddy Rich is an influence to me, not as much as other drummers, but it was like the response from fans, because it was like, man, something got posted on the internet or YouTube, a segment, and it was like super charged activity of, well, he's no Buddy Rich and Buddy Rich is blah, blah, blah. But I think most people miss the point. No one can be someone else. The thing is, I am me presenting this man's work and his artistry and the things that are significant from a musician's perspective, and more specific, from a drummer's perspective. This man had a really long career, and he played in a lot of different ensembles. So my perspective on that particular show of presenting his artistry or presenting him or doing him right is to showcase the different aspects of his playing throughout his career. Not to be like, oh, look at me, I'm Buddy Rich. I'm doing my Buddy Rich impersonation. Like, no. And the interesting thing for Buddy Rich, he didn't really write music or compose music. So generally, when you do an artist, it's more about from a compositional standpoint, because that's the thing that's left behind. Like that's a blueprint of their work, or how they heard music. When you do someone who is playing, is they're playing, you can only showcase the context of how they play, or in the context of how they play, as opposed to, you just presenting their music or doing, arrangements or refreshing their music or playing the exact thing that they doing what they did. So it's interesting of the perspective of how people, non-musicians or artists, perceive and receive music. You know, like the face of it. Sometimes it's beyond that. So I only say that to say, when developing your voice, like we were talking about it before, like where we are, it's like people say, well, I'm just trying to find myself. I say, well, you're only 18 years old or whatever. You're 25 years old. It's like, and you've played with no one of significance. And you know, it's like people, like you were just talking about music. Like I said, 5 albums. I say, man, check out one album for 3 months and know it. Like, I don't care how much music you checked out. And this is another common thing. I'm sure you run into this constantly every day. Have you heard a song? Yeah, I heard it. I checked it out. It's like the non-active listening.
Oh yeah, right.
You listen to it, but you haven't studied it. Like, studying something is very different than listening and being aware of it. It's 2 different things.
You know, something I tease my students with pretty often is well, it works better with when it's new students. But I'll ask people, I say, okay, what is the 8th grade biology term that you remember? If you can think of an 8th grade biology term. And I'll look around, 8th grade biology term. I say osmosis. That's the one that you remember. Why do you remember that one? Because you thought that you could put your book under your pillow and go to sleep, and by the process of osmosis, that information was going to mystically get in your brain, right? And yeah, it's not magic. You can't just turn the record on. Record. Phone, I guess it's a phone now. You can't just turn the track on your phone and not do anything and think that now you know, oh, look, I just listened to this. Now I know jazz. That's not how it works. You have to, we talk a lot about time, and you know, time waits for no man. Time is the most valuable thing that we have. You know, you can never get more of time, and it's sort of like, you can have an idea that you have a certain amount of time in your life, but you don't really know. And so we're taught to value time. And I think that is great. We need to value time. One thing that we don't talk about as much is energy. Because you can have the time, and if you don't have the energy, and if you're in the practice room or you're listening to a recording and it's just going by because you're just trying to spend the time, hey, I just spent my time, you know, listen to this. If it's not that intense, focused, leaning in, if it's not that intensity, that active listening, that really being engaged, that really being in the moment and really milking everything out of it, then sure, you had the time, but because you didn't put the energy and the intensity into it, you're not going to get anything. You know, that whole going through the motions, you know, I don't even know what the point of going through the motions is. I mean, the same amount of time is gone. What are we doing?
Well, there's a few things, and we talked about them. I have 2 things to say about the music. For one, there's a couple of things. For one, the world has sped up so fast that for artists in all disciplines, it's changed drastically. Because to master something like in athletics is still a little bit the same, like because you got to put in the same amount.
That's right. You got that short window.
Yeah, it's just like you're dedicated to doing that every day. For some reason, in music and art, it's so layered. It's not just you being proficient on your instrument. Now, I think there are a lot of younger musicians and the level of proficiency or velocity. Like there's different things. You can play a lot of notes and have a lot of technical ability on instruments all across the board. However, what has gone down is the consciousness and the spirituality. So you've substituted the spirituality and the feeling with a lot of technical ability. So technical ability is only good if you have a concept. Technical abilities is only as good as its concept. So you got a whole bunch of stuff and you can play a whole bunch of things, but there's no real cohesive perspective and concept, and it's not coming from an organic and human place. It's just a bunch of noise. It's like somebody it's like a guy that does the auctions for like the peak, like 500, 500, 550, 550. It's like talking like that with just nonsense. With no information, with no story. The other piece of it is for real artists around music, let's say organic musicians, organic music. So acoustic music, people that play together, people that have like folk music, blues, jazz music, genres that require somebody they can play acoustically. Two problems. No one pays for it, and no one listens to it. And it's the dog chasing its tail. Because people don't listen to it because they don't pay for it. And they don't pay for it, so then they don't listen to it.
Right.
So we're in a really crazy cycle now because people are like, well, so-and-so made so much money and they sold $1 billion, 100. So in a popular vernacular, for whatever reason, if your music is ignorant enough and it appeals to a very low common denominator thing, you can get attention around it now for a short amount of time until the next one comes. Then they're worn out from that. The way streaming works, I forget the exact metrics, but per stream is like 0.00675, something like that from like YouTube and Spotify. It might be the same or less. It's something like that, fractions of a penny. So if you have 100 million views, you could just do the math. That's 100 million. I think a few years ago, Pharrell Williams had Happy. His song had 1 billion streams. So 1 billion. Okay. Yeah. I think his royalties were like nothing, like 60,000, 100,000 on 1 billion streams though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, so that's like it's crazy. So basically music has been devalued. If it's not popular, it doesn't have value. Back to your point about Instagram, about likes. So it's all based on likes have value, but it's not necessarily true. Do they have artistic value? Not necessarily. They could, but they don't. But it goes back it goes back to economics. So if musicians, and this is true to this day in New York City, gigs still pay the same money they paid when I moved there in 1993.
Yeah.
And there are fewer of them, and there are way more people there to do them. So the price is constantly going down. So supply and demand. A lot of supply, not a lot of demand. And part of it is why musicians put themselves in a situation because their love for playing and performing music, they're willing to take less and less. So what's happened? They devalued the music.
I'm going to say something. I'm going to try to be careful. I'm sure we offended plenty of people already, so we're all right. But so you're talking about musicians putting them in a situation where what it is that they do is valued less. I feel it's hard for me to. Sometimes it's difficult for me to look and see what's happening on social media, because there's so much hunger by musicians to play, to perform. It seems like they may be actually that we may be actually hurting ourselves by showing how hungry we are just to play for any reason, you know. Yeah, we should love what we do. We should want to play. Music is our lives. I mean, music is the air I breathe. All of that stuff is true. But, you know, these gigs like in someone's family room or something, I'm not against making music. I'm not against using technology, you know, to do it. And I understand that people's income has been significantly tanked or went from hero to zero overnight. I understand. But when this thing is over, how is what's going on right now going to affect what a person's going to be able to ask for on a gig? I'm concerned about that.
I mean, it's already it doesn't even matter at this point. I hate to say it. It's been zapped for years, and for our generation, it's like we're like the forgotten generation. You know, generation older than us, they really zapped them, because all of those people that are masters is like, what platform do people have to hear music, and where does it sit in the cultural stream of America? Everyone wants to just see some young kid, the next young kid. I was like, man, that's just the most. It's ludicrous. When we were young, we were the young guys. We're coming up, and the old heads would be like, I mean, yeah, I got talent, but y'all ain't there yet.
Right.
You're not there, and it's true. You think we had the desire and the hunger to want to play, and we had the work ethic and the humility. We had all of those elements being young, and you stick to it. I mean, but right. You know, nowadays it's like people want to be a star overnight. I mean,
there's so much. Our culture so glorifies youth, and I don't know. Maybe that's a byproduct of commercialism. But it just seemed like there was a time in history when we really reverenced our elders, and we weren't so quick to try to, you know, put this next kid, you know, up at the same level, you know.
Because it's about monetizing it. Because people like spectacle. It's in human nature. Like, there's a cute kid. Wow, he's so talented, and da-da-da. And that's it. That's all the gimmick that you need. Doesn't matter how great he is, if he's actually legitimately great. However, for however great a little kid is, there's somebody that's 40 plus years old that's legitimately great.
Right.
Or, you know, without a doubt. And they should be checking them out. They just don't come in the packaging. It's all like marketing and packaging. It's like you get something in a really cute box. It's like, wow, this is so cool. And it's a piece of doo-doo.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, well, it doesn't matter. It's just the way it's sold and the way it's packaged. So that's never changed. However, it's more prevalent in the jazz idiom more than ever right now, because they're trying to make an art form popular. So to make something popular, you're willing to dress it up however you want, or market things that aren't really about the music, but it's different. Oh, this is the new sound. This is the new. It's like, no. How about you just play good? how about it's just like, man, they can play. Wow, this is an experience. These people are dealing. They're playing. Doesn't matter what they play. It's about playing. It's like ball, like basketball. No matter, every generation, there's new guys that come, but it's like the truth of it is are they balling or are they not? It's great to hear commentators, you know, Charles Barkley or, you know, whoever, and they comment on young guys that can play, some of them that are good, and the ones that aren't that good, they get a little bit of hype or whatever. They call it like it, they see it, but they play. Like, they're qualified. If you were an NBA All-Star and you had a 14, 15-year career, I mean, what is somebody going to tell you? Like, you don't know what you're seeing? It's like for us, like, we've been playing our whole lives. So it's like, what are you going to tell me about playing? Like, but we're not the people that get talked to. They get marketed by all of these other entities. It's like marketing. So people don't know anything about music. It's like me coming up to an engineer, telling them what I think about engineering. When I have to study engineering, I can have my opinion, but he's going to look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, we're kind of circling back to that whole idea of, you know, if you want to get something wrong, get 100 people in a room and have them vote on it. Because what it does is it equalizes. Everyone has the same voice, but everyone does not have the same experience. Everyone doesn't have the same education level. Everyone doesn't have even the same time in even listening to or understanding what makes good music, right? So you take somebody that has zero knowledge, or that would prefer to listen to, I don't know, insert your favorite, you know, pop artist, whatever, something that's produced well, but it's not the most talented person. They think that that's the best stuff ever, to someone that maybe they wrote a dissertation on Ellington. So you put those people you put them on the same level, and you say, okay, now vote. So now one of them votes this one and one of them votes that way. That just canceled each other out.
I agree, but I feel like it's even more swayed, because if you're promoting something and you're putting money behind marketing something, all bets off.
Oh yeah.
You're going to get everyone to vote in that direction. And
right.
If you add a sex appeal element to it and a pop coolness to it, and you add that, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter anymore. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I interviewed Wynton, and Wynton was talking about, he was talking about how messed up stuff is, and he was talking about how the arts, pornographic stuff being marketed to kids. He was talking about that, and that whole lowest common denominator, that baby take your clothes off, that business there, that is that stuff, man, how can we beat that? If we could just beat that one thing right there.
It's not going to happen, because there's too much money around it. It's not even about the music now. It's just a backdrop. Music, the actual music doesn't matter. It's all about the lyrics in the video.
Right.
So we're in a culture now, it's all about a video. It's not even about the music is a backdrop to a fantasy lifestyle that most people, first, it doesn't really exist at all. But then most people are chasing something that doesn't exist. And you have the fact that we now live in a virtual world. You and I'm not at your studio. I'm at my house, you're at your house. So this is just conditioning people more to live in a virtual world. The movie that I think Steven Spielberg last directed, or one of the last ones, was it Ready Player One?
I don't think I've seen that yet.
Man, it's just heavy just from the concept, because basically people have avatars and they are interacting in a virtual world. And inside of this virtual world, everything is basically real. You feel and touch and have emotion in a virtual place. But the reality is you living in a shack or whatever, like your real world. So people want to escape their real world to be in the virtual world. And so, it's, you know, same kind of principles with the Matrix.
Yeah.
You know, we're living in a non-real world. You know.
Have you different context, but I think totally relates to much of what we're experiencing right now. The movie Idiocracy.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's like a. I want to say it's like a late '90s, early 2000s joint. It has one of the Wilson brothers, and Terry Crews is in that movie. What's her name from Saturday Night Live? Maya Rudolph. She's in the movie. It's an A-list thing, but it's so surreal. You watch that movie and you see, and they're all about how they're using marketing to control folks. People don't have any idea. Like for instance, the people have become so dumbed down by being constantly marketed stuff that they didn't understand what that you should drink water. So they thought that Gatorade was what you drank, and that water is what was in the toilet, that what you used to flush. Okay, and so they were actually trying to water the ground. They couldn't figure out why they couldn't get plants to grow. It's because they were trying to give it Gatorade instead of water, because they had been so. It's like it's a satire. There's a lot of humor in the movie, but it's straight truth. Oh my goodness, it's straight truth.
Well, people are so ready to believe anything that's presented to them, and unfortunately, we're living in a time where real journalism is, man, it's like trying to find good jazz musicians. He's more scarce because if you don't play it's a very dangerous game.
Well, it's a for-profit industry. That's the issue with journalism. It's a for-profit industry. So if with the 24-hour news cycle, if I slant things a certain way and cover stories that I know people are going to have a hard time turning away from, right? And just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. Yeah. Anyhow, it's been great talking to you, man. We're gonna have to do this again because I feel like we barely scratched the surface. I didn't even ask you about what you're practicing. I didn't ask you about growing up in Detroit and any of that. So we're gonna have to have you back so we can talk again about some of that, man.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this. Now, one thing I noticed, I want to give you an opportunity to plug some stuff that you're doing, maybe a recent recording. I had Aaron Goldberg on, and you guys did a recording together recently.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how recent you had him on, but we have a co-led trio. I end up being more of the I guess the third answer. But we recorded our latest project was it's entitled Groove du Jour.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, it was kind of inspired by my being in France and then us recording for a French label, and I contributed quite a few songs for the project, and No, it was awesome, and it turned out that we actually won the Grand Prix Disque de l'année. We won the album of the year in France.
Congratulations, man.
Oh no, thank you. Which is, it's always great to get hardware, but it was, the project was very inspiring because, so the trio consists of Aaron Goldberg, which we met, probably 1990, and Omer Avital, who I met maybe in 1991 in New York. I would come to visit, with my cousin Carlos McKinney. So, and we started playing together like in the early 90s. So we've been playing together in different configurations, like, I'm scared to say how many years that was. That's a long time. So yeah, close to pushing 30 years. Pushing it.
Yep.
So it was a great project, and it was it's cool to play with people that you have trust with, and that you also develop together, and you develop a language, and you develop certain things together. And also playing in a trio's environment, there's a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
It's different than playing, in any other kind of configuration. So, it allowed me a lot of freedom and a lot of, and allows you to also use space in a very effective way. So that's kind of what I'm working on. So for all of the music students out here, I'm dealing with space, how to maximize space.
And I also noticed that you interviewed Wes Anderson.
I did recently.
So you have a new interview series that you're doing?
I do. I have a conversation series. It's entitled Artist Rap, and we'll have to get you on.
Oh yeah, man, I'd love to.
We have to get you on there. So basically, I have similar conversations that we're having now, a little more scripted around people's, development and their outlook on the art in an artistic, through the artistic lens, and how they've developed, and things that are significant to them and their journey, along with, a tad bit of their political outlook, and a tad bit of, some interesting anecdotes. So it's fun. I wish that the platform allowed us to, my idea was for us to always be in person, so we could actually do some playing. Because at the end of it all, like, playing is, there's nothing greater than playing the music, especially with those who actually can play. So.
Yeah. And you have anything else that you maybe a final word or something else that you want to mention?
Always respond in love. That's it.
Yeah. Well, man, I've had such a great time. Like I said, we'll definitely have to have you back. And man, we didn't even scratch the surface. I mean, there's like 1,000 things that we could talk about. So yeah, definitely gonna have you back. God bless you.
Man, God bless you too. And I look forward to seeing you in real life, in human form, not via a screen.
Right, not pixelated.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My best to you and family, always.
All right, you too, man.
All right, Dr. Thunder. Yes, sir.
All right, man. See ya.
Peace.
Peace.